What's up everybody, Shenmoki here. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Visions of Bodies Being Burned, the latest offering from the experimental hip-hop trio Clipping. This album is the follow-up to their horror-themed 2019 release, There Existed an Addiction to Blood, which was just such a fantastic showing from the group. A visceral and graphic, but yet catchy and fun album. In my opinion, it was a blast from back to front, and if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that album, let me know in the comments. But I digress. I'm happy to report that my feelings on Visions of Bodies Being Burned are similar to my feelings of There Existed an Addiction to Blood, but to my surprise with even more positives to take away from it. Now if you're wondering how or why I have access to the album is available for streaming if you pre-order the album from Sub Pop Records, link in the description of course. So if you're a fan of Clipping's work, and There Existed an Addiction to Blood especially, you should absolutely give the album a pre-order and give it a listen yourself. Trust me guys, this is a good one. But if you just want to hear my opinions on the album, with or without context, feel free. So let's get into it. The album starts as most Clipping albums do, with an intro. It's a good reflection of what's to come from the album, with a slow, driving bass line encapsulating David and sometimes completely submerging his vocals, spitting lyrics in his typical David way, mostly creating a vivid atmosphere with his words rather than telling a linear story. This is all delivered in a very creeping, sort of sinister way of tension building, a feeling often felt throughout the album, accompanied by another recurring sound, truly bone-shattering bass lines. This was one aspect that I feel Visions of Bodies Being Burned does much better than his predecessor, feeling more like a true piece of horror media, rather than just a piece of media with horror elements in it. This leads into our first single of the album, Say the Name. You already know what's up with this one. It's a slow burn song with at times stomach churning but consistently intriguing and entertaining lyrics, with just the most insane send-off you could possibly imagine for such a slow song. The song throws a lot of ideas and concepts at you, but few of these are revisited verbatim within the album, although admittedly some of the lyrics do feel a bit lost in the wind. Perhaps they are just there to set the mood or to tell a contained story. Maybe they do have a purpose in the greater context of the album, and a few months from now people will have cracked the code, but for now the song is simply an epic one, but one that feels slightly out of place given the rest of the album's rapid-fire pace. So next we move on to one of the album's few interludes, Witchboard. And I unfortunately have to report that they are mostly the same as Clipping's previous interludes. I see why they exist, but I'm just going to skip them upon re-listens. They do tie the album together well, and the way this one spills into the next track is pretty satisfying, but it still feels ultimately pointless. So let's get into the next track, another single, 96 Neve Campbell. A head-bobbing, blood-pumping track with sensational female features. A fantastic cut through and through with great beat switch-ups which complement the vocals perfectly, and a wonderful hook that's no doubt going to get stuck in your head. And a scream reference toward the end? I'm sold. Next up we have Something Underneath, an absolutely ballistic and incredible song. With foreboding and spacious beat at the start of the track, it plays a perfect contrast to the sheer insanity of the verses of this track. I haven't heard David quite chop like this since Get Up on their self-titled album. And the beat on here is just mind-boggling, a chaotic yet perfectly patterned barrage of drums with a wailing synth in the background, and one of David's most impressive showings both in his performance and his lyrics. The album then slows down a smidge with Make Them Dead, an ear-piercing melodic cut, which seems to set the scene of a mass suicide cult from the perspective of the god they worship, or at least that's how I see it. It's quite a slow song and in some ways quite relaxing, especially the female vocals on the hook. The ear-piercing synths do run themselves a bit thin by the end of the track, but it still does a great job of slowing the album down a bit after the insanity that preceded it. Next up on the tracklist comes She Bad, an obvious Blair Witch reference, but one that's executed perfectly, especially with some sort of a string sample in the background acting as a swinging of a gate to the cursed woods. The song is very spacey and fits the feeling of being alone in the woods at night quite well, feeling so open and free, yet the paranoia of feeling like you're being watched. The lyrics here are actually a step down I feel from the other cuts. They kind of start to repeat themselves after a while, but the outro of the song makes it all worth it in the end, with just enough instrumentation to cement impending doom but not detach yourself from the atmosphere. Next up we have the Invocation interlude, which is decent given how spacey and otherworldly She Bad was, but it's just a bit too ear-splitting for me. Again, you can have separate parts to an album without interludes, it's really okay. But that's fine, because now we're treated to easily the best section on the album, beginning with Pain Every Day. A fierce, scatterbrained instrumental with David giving such an intense and emotional performance, taking on the role of a spirit who feels disregarded in his post-mortem state, lashing out at the living. This is an absolute firecracker of a song, bringing everything that Clipping does well. Unique yet ear-candy instrumentation, brilliant sample usage, emotional, descriptive lyrics, and of course, one of the finest vocalists alive in David Diggs. And just taken up to 11. Just fabulous. I really can't wait for you guys to hear that one. Now for Check the Lock, a much more relaxed track than Pain Every Day, but every bit as good. This song tells the tale of an old cat living out his paranoia-filled days after his time in the game. David's world building, once again, beggars belief. I mean seriously, they should just write a movie or a TV show at this point. The song is slow and slick with hints of hip-hop resonating in it. It's a head bobber for sure, and while not gritty like most of the album, it's a welcome sip of water among most of the album, feeling like digesting rusty razors. Speaking of digestion, next up we have Looking Like Meat featuring Horror. You know, the ones with the 9s in the name. This one is another one of those shake your car to bits types of songs. It's truly cheek-shakingly loud, but it's also got a fantastic flow to it, David sounding as slick as ever over the beat, which is among my favorites on the album. It's almost poppy in a way. If the song weren't alluding to Ed Gein's style cannibalism, it'd probably be a smash hit. Well, there is something holding the song back. Horror members ride the beat switch up well, but man, David has just such a particular, not necessarily better way that he constructs his lyrics and flow, and more often than not, Clipping's features just go to show how differently David is doing things. Not that I hate how Horror sound on the track, but their lyrics and the effect they have over their vocals do detract a bit from how smooth and slick David's portions are. Overall, still an extremely catchy and fun track though, and feeds well into the album's story, which is something I'd like to go into more depth in sometime in the future. Let me know if you'd like to see that. So with that incredible section of the album done, onto the Drove interlude, which mostly just consists of sounds of farm animals, again tying into some of the themes about consuming other beings, racking up body counts, especially given what I think is going on in this part of the album. This leads into Eaten Alive, probably the most Texas Chainsaw Massacre-y song to ever exist. So guys, I gotta be honest here, even after multiple re-listens and a new viewpoint on the song, this is easily my least favorite song on the album. It's a very spacey and grimy sounding song, and it's intentionally hard to bob your head to. I feel like it's intentionally basic and almost amateurish sounding, running as an opposite to Say the Name. At least that's how I feel. They both have a long instrumental finisher, whereas Say the Name had a lush and epic closer. Eaten Alive has a sample of what must be kitchen utensils clanking together to wrap up the song. David's lyrics are similar in tone, very atmospheric and contain plenty of world building, but his delivery is noticeably more lax, intentional I'm sure. I think it fits the mood of the album, but like Tonight from their self-titled album, intentionally making a song worse than it can be doesn't absolve it from being a weak entry. And perhaps me connecting this song to Say the Name is actually just me trying to make the song more palatable for myself, and that claim doesn't actually hold any weight. So let me know what you guys think. After that we have Body for the Pile, another interesting track for the album. The song begins slowly, maybe a bit too slowly, with David turning to mentioning the mustard and mayonnaise on a sandwich to set the scene in unforgivingly high detail. But the song slowly revs up, each verse increasing in tempo to truly colossal heights, and once it gets going the song begins to earn its place on the album. Lyrically, I do have to get in close with them to see where this may or may not tie into the album, but by this point in the album it has to be said that Body for the Pile doesn't really bring anything new to the table, sonically at least. We have the ear-piercing samples, the intensely detailed setup, the lightning-fast verses, spacey instrumentation, and morbid lyrical themes already. That's what leads me to believe that I may just be missing something in the lyrics that adds more to the album, but for now I have to say that while I like this song, it feels a bit unnecessary. Unlike the final musical entry on the album, Enlacing, which is quickly becoming one of, if not my absolute favorite songs from Clipping. The song features an insatiable melody to it, gifted from a sample looped incessantly a la Blood of the Fang, which sets the backdrop of events to the song. According to Sub Pop Records, the song is about having a bad psychedelic trip in the club, but I feel like the song goes much deeper than that. But regardless of lyrical implications, the song is easily the poppiest and most accessible on the record, yet still feels welcome in the album thanks to some of the sonic groundwork being laid out throughout the album. It features a driving synth and bass line as well as crackling distortion. It's mesmerizing. The song is fun and entertaining through and through, and the lyrics, whatever their true meaning or intention may be, are some of the absolute best and most memorable on the album. Let's just say there's a phrase or two on here that will no doubt loop in your head for weeks to come after your first listen. And finally we have Secret Piece, a short piece which features samples of the outdoors. If this means what I think it means, it may be alluding to finding peace after death. But regardless, it works well as a sort of calming finish to this grimy, at times demented sounding album. And it not being 18 minutes like Piano Burning is a plus too. So overall guys, I think Visions of Bodies Being Burned is easily one of Clipping's best projects to date. It's focused but yet still very diverse sonically. It features some of David's all-time best lyrics and performances, as well as reintroducing some more noise and industrial elements without getting too carried away with it. It's incredible through and through, and I cannot wait for everyone to give it a listen. And if and when you do, be sure to tell me what you think of it in the comments below. Thank you for watching.